Everybody with Angela Williamson is made possible by Fireheart Pictures and viewers like you. Thank you. Arabella Bell Babb Mansfield became America's first woman lawyer when she was admitted to the Iowa bar in 1869. Although she passed the bar exam with honors, she would never practice law. She spent her professional life teaching, becoming one of the first female college professors and administrators in the United States. Bell was active in women's suffrage, working with Susan B. Anthony. Tonight, we talk to a modern-day Bell, former president of one of the largest bar associations in the country, top-ranked mediator, and fighter for equality for all. I'm so happy you're joining us.
From Los Angeles, this is KLCS PBS. Welcome to Everybody with Angela Williamson, an innovation, arts, education, and public affairs program. Everybody with Angela Williamson is made possible by viewers like you. Thank you. And now your host, Dr. Angela Williamson.
I am so honored. We have Michelle as our guest tonight. Michelle, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you, Angela. It's such an honor to be here. Thank you.
I did a little bit of a teaser to talk about your career and comparing you to a modern day Bell, but I want to bring our audience back before we talk about why you're here today. We'll talk about your books in the second segment, but I want to ask you a question. How does Michelle decide to go into law and then you choose an amazing specialty? So tell me a little bit about that.
Well, the funny part about that is I didn't choose it, at least not initially. It came to me. Actually, it's through a jealous former fiance. I was a student at UCI and I was a math major. I actually had planned to become a teacher. My grandfather was a professor and I was going to follow in his footsteps. They announced in orientation that there were no teaching jobs. So those of you who want to go into teaching, this is a while ago, I'm not going to say the year, but so I was like, whoa, what do I do? I'm a math major, I'm registered as a math major. So I went and I actually did all my required math courses in 2.5 years. So I was doing electives. And I also had this fiance who, this was the first time we were separated. He was at a different school and he was, I don't know, I'll just say rather on the jealous side. So his solution was when he went from a junior college to a state college and he said, okay, what I want to do is you and I are going to take night classes. And so I don't get credit for them because we were doing them at his school. So the first one was, well, it was accounting, I think it was, which when you're a math major, I was like kind of, oh, this is not resonating for me. The next one was economics. Now, while I can say now I'm more mature that I wish I appreciated economics more, it was also not one that resonated for me. But the third semester that we did this was business law. And so I was fascinated by widgets and contracts and things like that. So I still wasn't planning on it, and then another fellow student talked me into, you should look into law school. So that's how that happened. And so I ended up going through that process, and there I am.
Okay, I just want to talk about this. You're a math major.
Yes.
Then following what the fiance wants to do, you take night classes, and at some point you transition into business law, then you decide to go to law school. But your specialty is so unique because that's how people know who you are. So how did you choose your specialty?
Now that was a choice. So as I did everything. I did criminal law, I did civil law, I did all sorts of different things. And I finally, after about 10 years, decided employment law with people was just something that really resonated truly to my heart. It's about real situations with real people, and I felt like I could make a difference in people's lives. And it was the kind of thing that it's like playing out your own daily scenarios, and being able to help people one at a time. So I actually chose to specialize just in employment law at that point. So I had done business law, I had done criminal law, I had done all sorts of different areas, including mortuary law. I won't even go into that one, but we had some, and I actually represented bikers in biker bars. Wow. We had all sorts of different things. So like I said, I decided to finally just focus on that one area, and that's what I did, and that's what I'm most known for, besides all the other things. And that's the part where we're dealing with people's civil rights, workplace scenarios, the things that happen in the workplace that should never happen in the workplace. And that's what was my specialty. And to this day, I'm now transitioned into being a mediator, and I'm mediating. The majority of the cases are employment as well, so it's the workforce.
Well, and when a person goes into employment law, there's a passion there, right? So how did you use Michelle's passion to choose? Because I'm sure with employment law, you probably could have a number of thousands of clients. So how do you use your passion to choose the right client? And definitely I want to hear an example about how you chose a certain client and talk about that case.
I will say my passion was representing particularly the women and empowering those women, because so many of them were being sexually harassed. I'll just say somewhere back in the beginning of my career that year, it was rampant. In fact, I worked in banking going through college and law school. And so I always worked since I was like 13 years old. So I've always had a job, and did so through college and did so through law school. Excuse me. So I was well, first of all, working in banking, was a very male-dominated industry, and in fact, I remember the first time we got a female who is a consumer loan officer. It was a big deal that we got this female. So, and then we got a second one, and I was started as a teller, and there was so much sex harassment that was just going on. I will say nobody actually forced sex on me in that case. It was more of the talking about your body and your body parts on a regular basis, trying to look down your blouse in the uniform that we had to wear in the first place, those kind of things. So I turned into kind of a smart aleck. So here I am, I'm in law school at this juncture, and I'm, starting to learn.
You're already prepping yourself to be this employment law attorney.
So, but just the feel of it, and you sort of feel like you're a chattel, or, and it's just, and definitely you felt like a second-class citizen, so to speak. And so I ultimately paved my own way in terms of moving up, and I ended up starting on the path of consumer loan training alongside working on new accounts. And during that time, I was offered the opportunity to apply for a job as a law clerk up in the Los Angeles office. We were in a local one in Orange County. And so I applied, got totally lost driving Los Angeles streets as a young gal, but made it, and they hired me. So we set about whatever the date was going to be, and we set about training my replacement, and this was like a kind of a big deal. I've been there for several years, and I knew I was working up, and my next step would be after the consumer loans, and I would start getting into the rest. Yes. So now I'm being hired into the law department, and the law clerk, for anyone who doesn't know, law clerk is your lowest rung possible. Okay. So it's your entryway.
Yes, and every job has that. I mean,
exactly.
It's called a production assistant. Yes.
So, and I didn't think of it as a low position. It's the lowest job.
Well, you start.
And so my final day came, they gave me a going away party, and all of a sudden the head of personnel showed up. His name was Bart. I always remembered Bart's name. And he hiked himself up on my desk and he said, hey, I've got some good news and some bad news. I'm packing up, ready to go home this is a Friday, and then Monday I'm going to be driving to Los Angeles to my new job, the start of my law career. I was so excited. And so I immediately said, what's the bad news? He goes, it's not a big deal. It's just, and he starts talking, and he says, they'll get used to, and I go, whoa, what do you mean get used to? What are we talking about? So finally, I'll spare you all the little drama that went in during that. He essentially said, they aren't ready for you to start as a law clerk. And so they want you to start as a legal secretary. And I said, I've already done secretarial work, at several jobs, and I'm starting my law career. And he said, well, just start as a secretary and they'll get used to you. And I go, what's to get used to? I mean, I'm thinking, am I that weird? If this was my family, I would have understood it.
Yes.
So we kept going back and forth, and I said, no, I'm not. I got hired into this law clerk position. This is what I'm starting in on Monday. And he said, just start as a secretary and work your way up. I said, law clerk, and that's the reason I brought up the law clerk is the lowest position you can have. What do you mean work my way up? So in any event, he finally was not going to budge. And he says, just start working. I said, as a law clerk? He says, as a secretary. And then I just went, I quit. And then I was in tears, and I literally grabbed my things that I'd already been packing up anyway, and I left the bank. And I drove over to my law school. Now this will really date me. I drove over to the law school where they had a corkboard and index cards pinned for jobs. So I had never not worked since I was 13 years old, and suddenly it's like I just quit a job that was my dream job of working in the bank. In any event, I found a job.
You're leaving us, before we go to our break, you're leaving us when Michelle starts her career because you've taken chances up until then, and you've pretty much, it makes sense why you would choose employment law because of the personal experiences that you have. So when we come back from our break, I want you to fast forward to when you have your own firm, your big case, and how that transitions to you now writing books to encourage other women.
Thank you.
That's wonderful. So hold on 1 second, we'll be right back. And come back as Michelle talks about her book, Women Who Empower, and tells us about her other upcoming books as well. Welcome back. When we left before the break, we were talking a little bit about how Michelle worked her way through law school. And now we are going to pick that up and also talk about her book, Women Who Empower, and some other upcoming books. Michelle, that was such a great story. So when we left off, you graduated early. But when you graduated, you already had the professional skills because of where you were working.
Right. So that was a big bonus that this is kind of just a segue for just a second.
Yes.
We get these obstacles that happen in our lives. We get these things that we think are negative. All these different things that happen. I didn't get my job there. And then when you look back at it, you start going, whoa, look what I did get. So I feel like I lived my life like that. So when I say I didn't choose this or something, it's more of I didn't choose it, but I'm really blessed and lucky that I did. So that's kind of that path. So speaking of, I'll segue from there.
Yes.
We had the fortune of, we weren't in the same book group, but the fortune to do Women Who Empower, part of Kate Butler's books. I've always wanted to write. In fact, as a kid, I even wrote. I think I sent something to Teen Magazine and it never went anywhere, but.
Oh my goodness, I remember Teen Magazine.
And 17
yes.
and all those. So in any event, I had been working on my own book on balance, which is kind of ties into what happened with my legal career a little bit, but I'll come back to that. But while I'm writing this book on balance, I was in a Jack Canfield program, and I met a number of people, including Denise McCormick. And so I found out Denise McCormick was already a #1 international best-selling author. And I'm thinking, wow, this is really cool. So I wanted to meet her and find out how she did it. And she introduced me to Kate Butler. And so I didn't even know what the book was going to be about. I just finally said yes. And in fact, I started just saying, I need to say yes a lot more as these opportunities come up. But when I found out what the title was, I think I probably broke down in tears, because it was Women Who Empower. Now, in my legal career, when I started, there were not many women, lawyers. And so we grew, but like when we would start trials, they put everybody in what's called Department 1. So all the trial lawyers are there, and there were, I think, a total of 3 or 4 of us that were women. So we got to know each other pretty well, and so we sort of banded together. And I ended up forming a group. I didn't tell you about this before, but we formed a group just by collecting all the females we could find who were litigators, and we became the beautiful, bawdry, brazen broads of the bar.
Oh, a lot of alliteration there.
So, but we started off just supporting one another, and so one of the things that we dealt with was we sort of felt like we were unheard, and like we would be in a meeting, or we'd be in a, whatever it is we're doing, and people would be talking over us, and you'd start voicing something, and even if somebody was silent enough to hear it, nobody responded, and then somebody else would repeat the same thing that you said, and then they'd all go, "Oh, wow, that's a great idea." So we're like, "Okay, I guess you're my translator? I don't know, what's going on."
I believe you, but how is it that women lawyers are not being heard?
Exactly. That is a good question. So, of course, when we're in court, we're being heard, but what would happen is we're being talked over, and many times judges would just let it happen, and it's unquantifiable as so often. So what I started learning was, and my fellow female sisters, if you will, started feeling it as well, we had to do more and be better than the men in order to be respected and heard. If we had, by the way, if there was a meeting and somebody would look around the room, like there would be me, I'd be the only female, and there'd be a whole bunch of guys. Michelle, can you take notes? One time I actually did get a little flippant. I said, how did I stand out in the crowd? And he goes, "Well, I just thought you'd have the best penmanship."
But it's going back to the banking days where you were already qualified, probably overqualified to be the law clerk, but they're telling you they want you to be the secretary.
Yes, so it'd be like just automatically they see you as a female instead of a lawyer colleague. Now, those are early days, and I know a lot has changed now. There is still, in my opinion, inequality in a number of areas, but a lot of that got eradicated. So ultimately, I became the second female to be a bar president, and that was in 1993. All right, I'm going to go ahead and date myself there. And so,
but 1993.
Yes.
That still is not very long ago, and that's far away from 1869.
Yes.
So it took that long for you to get in that second position.
Our bar association was 100 years old, and my friend Jennifer King, she was elected the first one, and then 3 years later, I guess they got over the trauma of having a female at the helm, and I got elected the next time. So, and now we have a whole string. If anything, I think there's quite a bit of equality, in the genderization in the bar, hierarchy. But back then, for example, I was in what's called we have committees, and so I was in one of the committees, and it was called business litigation, and I was the only female for a long time, and then they would start bringing a female associate. So we'd have mostly guys, and then they'd bring a female associate, and I was doing most of the work. So I was helping with the meetings, and then I was pretty much putting together the meetings and whatever. I ran for just a chairperson of a committee. I ran for that 9 years. Well, I guess I didn't run all 9 years. Probably ran for like 8 years. And it wasn't that, so it would be the 10th year that I've been in the committee, I finally was elected chair.
Oh, so you're like the Susan Lucci, or did she ever?
Don't get ever respect,
Yeah, I think she finally won an Emmy.
I think she did.
Yes.
So it was that kind of a thing, and like you sit down at a table and people would look at you and go, like, "Why are you here?" And like, so I just went in. I decided, you know what? I'm going to have to be pushy. I'm going to have to be me. And so whatever conversation they were in, I would find a nook, where I can jump in. So those were those early days, and we really had to work hard at being heard. So that's what I meant by that. Yes. And the respect. I'll give you an example. I was in court. I'd been in practice about 10, 12 years at this point. My opposing attorney was an older gentleman. He was on his, later career. So he had other successful careers and now decided to become a lawyer. And the judge pulled us aside and we wanted to have a little private chat with both of us. And he said something he said to me, Ms. Reinglass, perhaps you could, speak a little bit, like in private, with Mr. So-and-so, you might be able to learn things from him as a senior lawyer. Now, I thank that lawyer because he immediately said, well, Your Honor, I think it is I who has to learn things from Ms. Reinglass because she's been in practice a lot longer than I have. And you could see the judge's face. He didn't know what to do with it. So later when we all finished, we walked up together, I thanked him and he goes, it was all I could do to stop just laughing, like seriously, And so there were a lot of honorable men who were helpful and supporters. In fact, I made it to my presidency with the help of many of the men. So, things were just different like that. But the reason I'm bringing this up, not to make a negative part of it, hey, everything we go through, we end up being better for. So, and of course you really appreciate everything, a lot more. But with that part about, having to always do more, I'll speak for myself and probably most of my female colleagues, never felt satisfied just doing the work and getting this thing done. We had to do more. And so I was constantly busy. I was working my tail off. I mean, we all were. By the way, there's nobody in law who isn't working very, very hard, but it was like to the point of insanity. And this is when I ended up realizing that my life was out of balance. And so, but anyway, let me come back from before I get into that part. So, I was just working at feverish levels, and then being a bar president, you're prominent to them. It's like, but I don't know all the people there, yes. But they all wanted to. It's like they see you as a role model. And I realized I really need to take that role seriously. And so I formed a gender equity committee. That was part of my dream for as soon as I was sworn into office. In fact, I started before I was even sworn in. I started getting my ducks lined up and got my chair and I got my co-chair and stuff. And ended up with a lot of judges and lawyers were on it, mixed both men and women, and it was very successful. We had created a hotline for sexual harassment and training on discrimination, and and I credit the chairs of that just immensely. They were just fabulous. But anyway, so because of all of that, there were just a lot of women who were seeking my help or seeking, like, can we go to lunch together? And of course, I could only split myself. When you're president of the bar, I think I was like 200 bar hours a month, and then I had at least 100 hours. I had that backwards. 100 hours of bar work and 200 hours of my work.
So you had your full-time job, and then you have this, which is another job, so you're working two jobs. So my question to you, before we end our time together, because I really want you to talk about this. At what point in Michelle's life where you realized you have to find balance, and how did you seek that out to come to this point where you're now writing these books to help encourage other women to seek the same balance?
So I started putting on these women empowerment events, and that was my dream come true. And so that was where, and I always had agendas and I had materials. So, and I was pick a topic, and by the way, they always took off with their questions. So we never stayed on track very long. And that was the beauty of it, because they shared what their problems were. And we were able, as the more senior lawyers, to be able to give our experiences and help. So I started doing those, started running out of time after a few years to do them. But that was just my huge passion.
Oh, I just loved our time today, but before we end our time, Michelle, can you just give us one advice that you learned for balance that we can just take into our lives today? Because we're all so busy, but what can we do to make ourselves balanced so that we can continue to pour out to the universe?
I'll say two things quickly.
Thank you.
So the first one I'll say, I like to refer to my 4 M's. And one of this motivation, because you can't get motivation, you have to get yourself into motivation to do something. Second thing is mindset, because our mindset is everything, okay? The third is meditation, and I really strongly recommend it, even for all the naysayers who think they have monkey mind. Yeah, everybody's got a monkey mind. So
it's okay, still meditate.
Yes. And then the fourth one is movement, and getting your body moving at all times in any fashion. But another tip I just would give, because this is the thing where you're in the middle of a crisis. You're in the middle of something that just hit you right now, or you just were in a place that's very toxic, something blew up in a meeting you're in. What I always do anytime a situation like that is I have to get away. So what I do, let's just say I'm in a mediation and then some people were, no, people never yell or scream, but people are yelling and screaming or something. It's whatever it is, I don't want to bring that to the next room. No. So I will pull out. So you can pull out anywhere, anytime, and just take 2-3 minutes and just do deep breathing. That's the first thing, like deep in and then exhaling out. And you do that a few times, and you're already changing your body chemistry right there. Your biology everything is just changing, and you're calming down. And then the next thing is I go into gratitude. So if I pair up the breathing, the silence, and the gratitude, then I am good to go. And so then you can go in and you can deal with whatever the toxic thing or the trauma was later, if you even want to deal with it.
But if you, in that situation, can find something to give gratitude for, you've already changed your mindset, right?
Exactly. Exactly. So when people are just overwhelmed, where they feel like you have too much to do, again, stop. Maybe like a traffic signal, you have the stop, the red means stop. Yeah. The yellow means, okay, now take it slowly. And the green light, okay, now that if you're done breathing, it's green light, go.
I love this. So, Michelle, thank you so much. I mean, you have done so much in your career, but how you incorporate balance with that, and on top of that, share that mindset with others. This is why you are the modern day Belle.
Thank you for that. I don't think I deserve that part, but yes, and thank you. It was such an honor to be here. I just admire you, everything you do. Thank you.
Honored to have you too. And we didn't get to talk about the other books, so you'll have to come back and talk about those books. So you're definitely a friend of the show, so thank you.
Well, I'll just say my book coming out later, shortly but later, is How to Break Free from Addiction to Busy. And so that ties in with the overwhelm and all that stuff.
And I think you should come back so that you can show us more of what you developed. So the M's are so important, but there's going to be more there. So definitely please come back.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us on Everybody with Angela Williamson. Viewers like you make this show possible. Join us on social media to continue this conversation. Good night and stay well.